Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb, and welcome to Conversation Daily News. Glad you all could be with us. Well, we made it to another hump day, but of course you have your news headlines coming up on this Wednesday. A message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By, and in today's Entertainment Spotlight, you guys are being part of my conversation with Dr. Derrick Noble. You guys can find him also here on Instagram. He joined me on Conversations Live, the radio show, this week to talk about his new book, Leadership Launch, Essential Skills for New Leaders. You don't want to miss that. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Wednesday headlines. In international news, race to find survivors as quake aid pours into Turkey and Syria. Search teams and aid poured into Turkey and Syria on Tuesday as rescuers working in freezing temperatures and sometimes using their bare hands dug through the remains of buildings flattened by a powerful earthquake. The death toll soared above 7,200 and unfortunately was still expected to rise, says the Associated Press. But with the damage spread over a wide area, the massive relief operation often struggled to reach devastated towns, and voices that had been crying out from the rubble unfortunately have fell silent. We could hear the voices. They were calling for help, said one of the relatives of those who could not be saved in a Turkish town. In the end, it was left to a Syrian who arrived a decade ago and other residents to recover the bodies and those of two other victims. Monday's magnitude 7.8 earthquake and a cascade of strong aftershocks cut a swath of destruction that stretched hundreds of miles across southeastern Turkey and neighboring Syria. The shaking toppled thousands of buildings and heaped more misery on a region wrecked by Syria's 12-year civil war and refugee crisis. One trembler that followed the first registered at magnitude 7.5, powerful in its own right. Turkey is home to millions of refugees from the war. The affected area in Syria is divided between government-controlled territory and the country's last opposition-held enclave, where millions live in extreme poverty and rely on humanitarian aid to survive. Unstable piles of metal and concrete made the search efforts perilous, while freezing temperatures made them ever more urgent as worries grew about how long trapped survivors could last in the cold. Snow swirled around rescuers in Turkey, according to footage circulated by the state-run news agency. The scale of the suffering and the accompanying rescue effort were staggering. More than 8,000 people have been pulled from the debris in Turkey alone, according to the Turkish vice president. In national news, Biden aims to deliver reassurance in State of the Union address. President Joe Biden offered reassuring assessment of the nation's condition rather than roll out flashy policy proposals as he delivered his second State of the Union address on Tuesday night, seeking to overcome pessimism in the country and concerns about his own leadership. His speech before a politically divided Congress came as the nation struggles to make sense of confounding cross currents at home and abroad, economic uncertainty, a wearying war in Ukraine, growing tensions with China among them, and warily sizes up Biden's fitness for a likely re-election bid. The president stood at the House rostrum at a time when just a quarter of U.S. adults say things in the country are headed in the right direction, according to a new poll by the Associated Press, NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. About three-quarters say things are on the wrong track, and a majority of Democrats don't want Biden to seek another term. Biden confronted those sentiments head-on, aides say, while at the same time trying to avoid sounding insensitive to Americans' concern. With COVID-19 restrictions now lifted, the White House and legislators from both parties invited guests designed to drive home political messages with their presence in the House chamber. The parents of Tyree Nichols, who was severely beaten by police officers in Memphis and later died, were among those seated with First Lady Jill Biden. In more national news, Navy releases first photos of Chinese balloon recovery. Using underwater drones, warships, and inflatable vessels, the Navy is carrying out an extensive operation to gather all the pieces of the massive Chinese spy balloon a U.S. fighter jet shot down off the coast of South Carolina on Saturday. In the newest images released by the Navy on Tuesday, sailors from the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group are seen leaning over a rigid hull inflatable boat and pulling in broad swaths of the balloon's white outer fabric and shell structure. In entertainment news, tickets for Beyonce's first concert world tour sells out. Tickets for the first concert of Beyonce's upcoming Renaissance World Tour sold out on Tuesday, and concert management group Live Nation said a second concert in Stockholm was added because of the high demand. The tour starts in Sweden in May and is scheduled to include stops in London, Paris, Barcelona, Toronto, and the United States. The last expected concert is set for September 27th in New Orleans. No details were given on how quickly the R&B superstar's fans snapped up all the tickets for a May 10th Stockholm show. Tickets are set to go on sale today for the second show in Sweden's capital on May the 11th. And finally, in business news, stocks closed higher on Wall Street after the head of the Fed Reserve signaled last week's stunningly strong jobs report isn't likely to change where interest rates are heading on its own, as some investors had feared. The S&P 500, the Nasdaq, and the Dow rose. Comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell sent stocks from losses to big gains and then back and forth a couple of times. High inflation and how high the Fed will take interest rates to fight it have been at the center of Wall Street's wild movements for more than a year. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's now time for a message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By. Enjoy. Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb, and welcome to Words I Choose to Live By. You were created with everything you need to be just the person you were meant to be. Now go out there and be it. Have an amazing Wednesday. We are part of my conversation coming up with Dr. Derrick Noble in today's Entertainment Spotlight. Stay with us. You're listening to Conversation Daily News. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with Entertainment Spotlight. Dr. Derrick Noble joined me on Conversations Live, the radio show this week, to talk about his new book, Leadership Launch, Essential Skills for New Leaders. Here's a bit of our conversation.
Dr. Noble, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Cyrus. Good to be with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure's definitely all mine. I really enjoyed this book, and I was messing with you earlier. This conversation has been a long time coming. I know I've been working to try to get this solidified for you for a while, so I'm so glad to have you on. I want to talk about... Yeah, I want to talk to you about something that I think is relatable to people, though, Dr. Noble, and that is the responsibility of leadership, right? I think a lot of times people think about wanting a title, wanting a position, but what has it been like for you to embrace the responsibility that comes with that?
Oh, very good question. It's not about title or position. It's about influence. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I like to add a little bit to that. Leadership is influencing people to do things to help themselves and the organization to rise to new levels. So I like to think of leadership in that way. The responsibility of a leader, I like to say, is threefold. Leaders, first of all, are models. And I'm talking not just about leaders of business organizations, but leaders in relationships. Parents are leaders. Leaders are models, first of all. A leader should be able to show you what to do by their own example. I'm sure you've heard, as I have heard, and I heard this growing up a lot as well, don't do as I do, do as I say. If that's your mantra, you're a horrible leader. No matter what position you're in.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning into this edition of Conversations Daily News. We'll be back on tomorrow with more news, message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By, and of course your Entertainment Spotlight. Until then, I'm your host Cyrus Webb saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Daily News today. Now let's go and make it a great one.